posting up pictures, trying to look like you winning. I'm writing rhymes in the kitchen, soaking in moments we live in. Yeah, you got the nerve to be on me, faking your life for the IG. If you got my number, don't add me, cause baby, I'm on hiatus.
Hey, guys. Thank you for tuning in this evening to Grown Dating Talk. I'm your host, Alona V. And tonight we're going to be discussing an important topic that is really important in dating and relationships. And it might trigger some people, in all honesty, because some of you are going to agree with some of the opinions that we have and perspectives that we have on panel. And some people are not going to agree with it. But for tonight's episode, we're going to discuss toxic masculinity. We're going to discuss what it is, what it looks like, where it stems from, in addition to the pressures and impact that it has on the newer generation of men coming up and the generation of men that we see out there today. For those of you who feel like, well, why didn't you have more women on panel tonight? Because we're going to have a part 2 where we talk about toxic femininity, and that's going to be on a separate episode.
Right. Like it becomes toxic is when it's the expectation is solely based on your gender. So that's like it. Chris, everything you were saying, and even Rick, like I've been teaching remotely. My wife's been teaching remotely, and then she's back at her job. She's actually she's a Dean 3, so she's like one step down from an assistant principal. I've been doing the vast majority of the cooking. Like since we've lived together, I've done the vast majority of the cooking. Just like you said, Rick, my wife can cook. I like to cook.
Right.
So like that, I think the danger is when people just look beyond the individual that they're dealing with and just go, oh, well, you're the woman, we're going to live together. So you should probably do X, Y, and Z versus just like actually dealing with the individual that you're dealing with. But part of that, it becomes a lot harder to do that the longer you're with somebody, because then you actually learn who that person is. And I think a lot of relationships break down because we already have these preconceived notions of what the relationship should look like.
Right. Exactly. Like for me, like I'm a big dude, and when a dude, and I also my day job is I'm the director of personal training at a gym franchise, and so when the other big dudes, they find out that I cook, they're like, "Oh, your wife doesn't cook," and I'm like, "No, I enjoy it," and they're like, "Oh, I see it," and I'm like, "Oh, well, what is it that you see?"
Yeah, because you're gonna put them on blast.
Yeah,
like,
because both Christian and Alana will tell you, like, I'm funny as shit. I roast, and so that might be considered a toxic trait because I roast without mercy, and that goes all the way back to the 90s and the 2000s. That's just what we do. And so
somebody overstep, I'll hit up Rick like,
right, yeah, I overstep. I'm a habitual overstepper. And so
that's that toxic right there, you know.
Yeah, it
you
is.
You say the wrong thing, you know.
But right,
south,
you know. Sometimes that's a little necessary because they're like, oh well, my lady, she'll just order food for me, and I'll be like, well, that's why you got diabetes, because all you do is eat out, high sodium sugar.
Exactly.
And meanwhile, me and my lady, we looking good and we feel good because everything's home cooked, and everybody who's there is like, oh, like why'd you say that his feelings are hurt? And as a point of discussion, my particular toxicity is that I don't care if they're hurt, because they're an adult and it should have stayed in their place. Because if you mess with the bull, you get the horns. Period.
I feel like I'm back in
So
now.
Don't start none, won't be none.
I think that a lot of times people will say things like, oh, this person is toxic because they're conceited. This man is toxic because he wants to be above everybody else. And I'll say, well, no, he's confident in himself and he's sound in the way he feels and the way he thinks. And there's nothing toxic about that. Like toxic is if he's just coming out and starting shit with you and trying to watch with you and bring down
to make himself look like a bigger man. Now we don't have time for that. I'm mind my business. I'm just trying to, do some things.
And so I'm like, if you got something to say and he responds back and you can't take what he had to say in return, that didn't make him toxic. That makes him well-versed. He can reciprocate very quickly.
But that's more about the expectations that someone had when they approached you. It's the same thing with women. When especially in the 90s and the early 2000s, if you were assertive, actually worse earlier than that. Because you had women who were assertive, you had women who thought for themselves, you had women who were educated, and they were reviled. Like they were called every negative word under the sun simply for the fact that they were willing to assert themselves. So a lot of that, especially when you're talking about Black and brown men, a lot of that comes from a space where the second that we become assertive, we're viewed as dangerous.
Yes.
Right. So part of it is
assertiveness with aggression, and that's not true.
Yeah, because part of it is because of racism in this country, Black men were really only allowed to be aggressive with other Black people.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, and if you showed that outwardly, like your life was on the line. So we only were really able to show that amongst each other. So when you get like myself in a professional space, that doesn't happen so much now because I think people are more well-versed in certain things. But the second I had a disagreement about anything, and if I raised my voice even an iota, it was a problem.
Right.
He looked at me differently. I had instances where I was asked to tuck my shirt in at jobs where white people were not asked to tuck their shirt in at jobs. And it had nothing to do with simply the fact that the way that people would perceive me. So a part of it is that as well. Like, that's why the expectation is what it is.
I agree. That's toxicity, because it's like the workplace comes at men of color with this idea like they need to be domesticated. First off, that's a whole grown man there. He knows how to govern himself. You know, I truly dislike when society tries to tell a man how to wear his hair, how to wear his clothes, what type of tone to use, because quite frankly, society doesn't tell women how to wear their hair. Society does not tell a woman what tone she should use when talking. Let's be
well.
Yeah, they do. They certainly do. That's what I was saying. Like, if a woman's assertive, it's no, she's a bitch. She.
Yeah. You're right about that.
She's problematic.
Yeah.
Or that
they label her as problematic not by her tone. They label her as problematic based on what comes out of her mouth. Because I can say some very professional things in a high tone and people won't say I'm problematic. But now let me come out of my mouth in detail with things, and now I'm a bitch. Now I'm problematic. Now I'm all these other things. You know,
you can even have the absence of tone and just the fact that people are unaccustomed to you speaking out at all.
Yes.
Like it's this social inertia that we all have, that like things that we're not accustomed to are they're just viewed negatively. Like myself, just to get off topic for 2 seconds.
No, go ahead.
I know a lot of people who happen to be gay. I don't know a lot of transgender people. I have a lot of former students who are transgender, but in terms of actual acquaintances, friends, coworkers, very limited. My comfort level around transgender people was simply not the level it would be if I was around someone who wasn't transgender, because that just simply wasn't my experience.
Exactly.
So if you come from I grew up in a primarily West Indian neighborhood. Everything was Batiman Fided.
Yes.
Right? Even though Jamaica has one of the largest like per capita percentage of reality, right? But that was just the experience. So I have a lot of friends who are West Indian who their comfort level around people who are homosexual gradually increased over time because that just simply wasn't their experience. Similarly, if you see a woman and you're never used to hearing them speak out at all, to hear a peep is almost like a tree falling in the forest and everybody's around to hear it.
Everybody's
I did some work in the mental health community some time ago, and I became friends with, I was at a training, I became friends with a transgender woman.
Okay.
She did not know me from anybody. And we were at the training, everybody was sharing. I don't recall what the topic was, but I do. It was the topic of pronouns. Mm-hmm. And so everybody's going around and talking about their pronouns and why they chose them. And so it got to me.
And a big thing with binary pronouns out there, because now people are,
and that's all it was. She did not take her eyes off me. And so it got to me. And for me, I was like, well, I don't use any pronouns and I don't particularly care about this person or that person. Just wash your hands when you use the bathroom. And so everybody's laughing. And so we took a break and she approached me and she said, I misjudged you. And I was like, well, how so? She said, as soon as I recognized you, I became hyper triggered because just by your look, she's a large woman. She said, just by your look, you represented all of the type of men that ever attacked me verbally and physically.
Wow.
But your joke was so sophisticated that it made me come up to you to give you a second chance. And from that day on, we made sure that we spent at least 5 or 10 minutes talking. And even for me, for my age group, like I feel like I'm a lot more enlightened than other men in my age group.
Mhm.
But it's like, you know what? I need to not represent my age group and really making an honest attempt to get to know this person. And we're friends to this day. And it gave me a glimpse, and you're absolutely right. Like, I didn't grow up in a West Indian household, but my father was from St. Thomas, and same thing in my household. But it's a different time now. And you sharing that story, like you don't have much experience, it just reminded me of that. And it's like just walking in the room, just being who you are sometimes, it kind of reflects the toxicity that we're talking about tonight. But you got to go beyond that, and you got to of course I felt a little bit uncomfortable, but now I don't. And now we check in, and this individual, I think, is one of the smartest people who I've ever had the opportunity to like talk to, like deeply politically connected, just a wonderful human being. And it's like, imagine if I would have jumped into the role of the traditional male that reflected in her experience. Where would we be today?
You guys wouldn't be talking. You definitely wouldn't be talking.
No, absolutely not. But all it takes sometimes is just to alleviate the situation by saying, I don't care what you are, just wash your hands.
Mm-hmm. And you know what I think is important in there too? I think that we as a society need to start looking at what we consider qualities of masculinity. Because as you said earlier on in the episode, that with now that times have changed, this definition of what it is to be a man has changed too. Because what it is to be a man is not the same today as it was back in 1920. For instance, back in 1920, being a man meant that your wife stayed home with the kids and you could pay all the bills and take care of it. And if you couldn't, then you had to go out and get a second job, because being a man meant that your woman didn't have to work and that your kids didn't need for nothing. Nowadays, being a man doesn't necessarily involve being able to pay all the bills and take care of the household and have a woman to stay in. Being a man involves being open-minded. Being a man means being able to accept that there are others out there who walk and carry themselves in different lights, and being able to make them feel comfortable too and understand that they exist, and modeling that for other young men to be able to see, so that they understand that when they become men, they get to exist in life and they have a right to be accepted and belong, a sense of belonging, so to say, you know?
My only caveat is that all of those statements need to be quantified by men.
Yes.
Like not this panel, but maybe a bigger panel needs to say, okay, we agree, we disagree, we agree, we disagree, and drill it down and say, okay, let's take this information that we all agree on and move forward. And women, this was decided by men, and our behaviors are going to carry this out, but you can't just tell us how to be men, because we got to do it.
You know what? Men need to tell women, sorry, but we didn't get your phone call at the Federation of Men, because women like to say, I'm gonna call up the Federation of Women, I'm gonna call up the Federation. Well, the Federation of Men have a sign on the door that said, no fucking women allowed. We don't want your opinions.
No, ma'am.
Not needed. No, ma'am. Yes. Remember the Little Rascals? The Little Rascals had it.
Yeah, that's Al Bundy, Married with Children. No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
Oh, yes. No, ma'am. That is right. Al Bundy had it. Al Bundy had it. No, ma'am. That was funny as hell, too. No bigums.
You know, a lot of it is like, I think strong, especially strong, assertive women, don't want to hear this statement. And I'm outside of childbirth, talk about everything external. Men can do everything that women can do.
Outside of childbirth.
But women can't do everything that men can do. Men need to be responsible and be mindful of that and not hold it over their head, because that is toxic. But women need to stop reminding men, oh, I can do everything. No, you can't. You can't. And you're not supposed to. But my job is to make sure that I'm not an asshole and I hold it over your head.
Yes.
My job is to not say, well, I can do this, you can't, because I'm the man. No, stop that.
Mhm.
Do you have any examples, Jenkins?
With the kids,
Yes.
when it comes
So-
down to
so-
taking
so-
care of kids, women
right.
assume men can't do it.
Right. So let's go back to like child rearing. Okay. Women are much better nurturers than men, but men can nurture too. It's just different.
Yes.
Okay. I can nurture too.
Y'all
But
be
if-
nurturing by listening and shit. Men be like,
Yeah.
I don't hear nothing, they
Right.
fine. Like, what the fuck?
And I'm gonna so Christian, I'm gonna drill it down to a very specific example. Okay. Women can nurture their, and I'm talking about daughters. Women can nurture their daughters. But a man, especially when she gets a little older, can nurture his daughter by telling her no.
Mhm.
The greatest word a father can tell his daughter is no. No, you can't wear that. No, you can't go out. No, you can't date that boy. And she's gonna hate you.
Yes.
Boy, she's gonna throw it, but she'll get over it. But
Mhm.
if you tell your daughter no, we're at War 3.
Oh yeah.
Because all she's gonna do is throw a little tantrum with us, but she's gonna get over it. Why? Because men have that. It's a different kind of nurturing. It's more of a, you know what? Yeah, I'm gonna let you go, let you go, let you go. Can I do this? And if it's extreme, no.
Mhm.
We have the liberty and the leeway to drop that 2-letter word, but moms can't do that because it's a fight.
Yeah, it is a fight.
Oh, you don't understand what I've been through. And women are so close to their daughters, they love their daughters so much that they jump right in.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Oh,
So it's
you
like-
think tough? Yes, she thinks she's tough.
Yeah.
Of course she does. Oh, this is the greatest toxic statement of all time.
Mhm.
I brought you into this world.
can
I will take you out.
Oh my God.
Oh, those are the famous
telling-
words.
My mom is 79 years old. When she was younger, yes, she was quite the gangster. She don't have those powers anymore. She got a great grandson. The other day she tried to hit me with that. I was like, how? With your slow ass left? You can't beat me anymore. It's not, you can't, yes, you brought me into this world and I appreciate you, but you can't take me out.
Yeah, because I think parents like, I think moms assume like you're gonna stand there as an adult and just get your ass whooped. Like,
And just
first
like,
off, exactly. Jesus
I'm not
said,
sure.
turn the other cheek in the Bible. Mom, I'm leaving out the
Right.
door. I'll see you next week. Like, we're not about to do this.
right. And but then the serious part of that is women who raise strong sons
Yeah.
is a trade-off. Because you know, if you're a strong young man, of course you love your parents, you love your mother, but you might not be as huggy or anything like that. And so that can be defined as toxic.
Yeah.
But it's not, because, and so this is the trade-off that women have to pick with their sons. So you're either going to raise a cuddler or a conqueror. And if you raise a cuddler, then as you get older and as he gets older, then your son is going to demonstrate a lot more affection. But if you raise a conqueror, then you're raising that boy to conquer, to be relentless, to dominate appropriately everything that he sets out to accomplish. And when he gets older, he will not be a cuddler.
Exactly.
And so you have to pick your struggle. Do you want a son who's going to care for you when you get older? Or do you want a son who's going to provide you a kingdom? And that man is going to be the same man with his partner. But hopefully he finds the right partner, like Mike found his, I found mine, who's going to say, you can conquer, but talk to me.
Yeah.
You can conquer, but let me know what's going on, what's on your mind. How can I help you conquer? What can I do to support? Right.
Just let me know why we moving these pieces.
Let's spin the globe and let me put my finger on where we're going next. Okay, because that's an acceptable trade-off. And now what you're doing is you're empowering that man to remove more toxic traits so that you can develop more of a partnership. And those things are going to be reflected on your kids. And that's my 2 cents.
Well, what happens if, like, you know, the man doesn't know he's being toxic, but if it's just natural to him to be in this way?
Then it takes all the men around him who are evolving to be like, bro, sit your ass down because you are fucking up. And that's a hard conversation. And Mike, you said it earlier, like men, like brown men, when we start to like talk our talk, you know, we get loud, we get aggressive. and other people view it as aggressive, but that's how we keep each other in check. Like, we don't say, hey buddy, can I chat with you for a second? Now I'm like, yo, my man, sit down, because you acting up. And that, with those words, you acting up, can lead to one thing or another. But it is necessary. It's necessary for us to check each other and to say, yo, you're not doing the right things. You are really fucking up. And you need to fix this, because that's how we hold each other accountable. So what happens when that happens? That's what happens. Christian, why you out here acting the fool, talking to your lady like anyway in the street, having her looking stupid out here? Come here, let me talk to you for a minute. And my tone is a little bit aggressive because we need to have that level of conversation. But when we're done, the tone is going to soften, because hopefully we come to an understanding that you can be a strong-minded male without being that, without having that old school like ridiculousness where in order for you to be superior, she has to be inferior. No, we don't have time for that. And even for Mike and I are 10 years apart. For Mike to be like, yo, Rick, why you acting like these OGs out here? You really bugging. What are you talking about? And for him to be able to break it down for me to say, you know what, you're right. Let me change my behavior, because saying sorry is not enough. You got to change your behavior. You can't just say the words, because sorry is changed behavior. And that's how we check each other.
Yeah, it's difficult to do it. And part of the reason why I said like it's important to know, to recognize when you're imperfect and to state it is, excuse me, it's difficult to have those conversations with somebody and to check them if you're not willing to admit to doing something similar. It's like when you're having a conversation with anybody, right? You want to make it relatable in some way, shape, or form. And for me, actually, I have a couple of former students that I'm still in touch with. I see every now and again. One of them, Joy, I'll drop the name, Joy Fell. Congratulations, about to have a baby. Love you.
Yeah.
He was over last year at my house. Him and another one, Brian. And we were having a conversation and having conversations with them about relationships and being able to tell him, listen, he was having an issue with his lady. And I had to tell him, listen, I mess up all the time. Dude, just say you're wrong. Just say it. And it's important. And I know I don't say women harp on this. I've heard this more from women than I've heard it from men, but I've also dated less women than I've dated men. It's important to not just say, I'm sorry I hurt your feelings. I'm sorry that what I did hurt you. It's no, you have to apologize. You have to really understand what it was that you did and how you actually impacted the other person negatively. And if you're not willing to internalize that and to have those honest conversations with yourself, you can't have that conversation with anybody else because they're going to see right through it.
I feel like it's just like how men communicate also. I feel like for me growing up, it's just like, oh, what's wrong with you? Why are you crying? Like, you know, like I feel like I've always had like that type of like male role model to like press me. It's just like, oh, what's wrong? You know? So I agree to what you just said.
And was it a supportive what's wrong, or was it like a what's wrong, like suck that shit up and get over it, what's wrong?
It's I mean, it's been told to me like every different ways. So it's just like, oh, like let's say I'll have like a bad day at school. I'll just be like, I'll just suck it up and just like not really talk, not really open up. I remember my ex-girlfriend, she was asking me like, oh, why don't you open up? Why don't you talk to me? Like, I know something's bothering you, but you're not willing to budge. And it's just like me growing up, it's just like, in my head, I'm thinking, I'm not going to fold, I'm not going to break, because if I open up, I feel like I'm already defeated type of way. And that's just like, I naturally just picked up on just like other men around me. Like, I never really had a father figure to be like, hey, you know, you're doing this, you're doing that. No, I never had that. So I'm kind of just like going with the flow of my own. So when she was just asking me like, oh, like, why don't you like talk to me now? Like, why don't we just like go hang out? And you tend to just like, when it just gets worse, you tend to distance yourself from people. You tend to distance yourself and you try to better yourself. And even if it's just like going to the gym, because I know for me, it was like that too. I cut everyone off and I just started hitting the gym 7 days a week, nonstop. Until like one day it was just like a caring person would just be like, hey, what's wrong? Like, I know you've been hitting the gym like crazy, going a little bit too off. You need to slow down. What's going on? And they would like pull me aside, like, yo, why don't we just grab a water, grab a drink? and we see what's going on. It's just like, to me, it's just like that helping hand, you know?
Mhm.
Most guys don't really have that. It'll just be like, hey, why don't we have a drink? Or just suck it up, stop being a bitch type shit.
But you had that. And so if that opportunity ever comes up, I would love for you to think about saying, you know what? I think I will talk to you about what I'm feeling. And talk to her.
Mhm.
It's true.
If she's listening, just talk to her.
Mhm. Give her that opportunity to be there without assuming that you're going to trigger her. And also understand that if you tell her something that is going to trigger her, trust her to be able to still be able to be there for you through the trigger. Because if you don't take the risk, you won't know if you'll benefit from the chance.
Right. I agree.
You know?
That's exactly the word my wife uses, trust. When in instances where that happens, she'll say exactly that. Why don't you trust me enough to tell me what's on your mind? Why don't you trust me enough to open up and trust me enough to be able to deal with whatever it is that you're feeling? Because so essentially just give her the same trust that she gives you whenever she opens up.
Right.
Mhm. That's why
it's like a vice versa type thing, right?
Exactly.
Yes. And I think that that is really important because especially if as males, you didn't get that growing up, that's really important to give yourself in adulthood. Like if you want a partner that's going to be there to be supportive of you, you want to be able to identify, well, what does it look like to support me? Because a lot of times men will say, well, this woman is not supportive of me. And again, I'm not coming down on men, but women will look at men and go, what the hell he mean? It's not supportive. Like, does this motherfucker even know how to support himself? You know, and we're not even talking about finances. And men is like, oh, she's bugging out. No, she's not, because she's recognizing some things in you, and she's not the perfect person. She got her own shit that she got to handle. But
right.
she's the person here who may be in shambles, may still be fragmented, grown, whatever it is, but she's recognizing like, hey, I recognize that because I saw that growing up. I have that within me. And then she's trying to dig and ask questions to find out like, well, what do you need? And then men most times don't even know what they need because like you said, Rick, no one's ever asked them and given them that time to really sit down and process like, damn, what do I need? I need a hug. I need some alone time right now. I just need some quiet time to process. I need a day or two when I'm not expected to solve everybody else's problems because I just really need to think about my problems. I need to feel my emotions and really feel it and go through it and see what that is like for me. When I feel these emotions, I don't even know how I'm going to be as a person or how I'm going to view myself as a man. So you know, like I think that that's really important too. And that's another reason why women shouldn't be out here society should not be out here trying to tell a man how to be a man, because he needs time to figure out who he is and what he needs himself in order to be able to identify that for other people.
Well, that's too much work. Who has time for all these feelings when there's so many things that we need to do?
Right.
Yes.
That's really the crux of it is. And I, even with my own wife, who is a very loving individual, we have this issue sometimes too, where I feel like she focuses more on what I do or don't do and less on the feelings behind it.
Yes.
So for example, my grandfather passed away last October. We didn't have a close relationship until I was an adult, but that man was my father. So very deeply impacted by that. And there were a lot of times where I didn't have the energy for anything. And there were moments where I would say outright, oh, I'm okay to do this. I'm good. Let's do it. And then end up at the end of the day, just clearly lying to myself and not being ready. And then where she would harp on, well, you said you were okay. You said you were okay. Clearly I wasn't okay. But also part of that that's my fault because I'm good.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm good.
So it took a while for him. And I think the only reason that our relationship has continued to be successful, because we've had a lot of deaths in our families, like maybe 4 or 5 deaths in the last couple of years. And the only thing that has allowed us to remain as a successful couple is the fact that we're able to be as open as we have been, to the point where she's able to tell me, listen, this isn't your day. Like,
Mhm.
I know this isn't your day and I can do the same thing. But at the same time, we had to build that trust. So if she tells me I can tell you're not good, it's not your day, I can fall back and say, you know what, you're right.
Mhm.
As opposed to just, no, I'm just going to power through because that's all I've been taught to do.
I think because you guys are counterparts and not competitors. And I think that that is something that gets confused in relationships today with men. Women fail to understand that you're in this relationship with him to be his counterpart, not his competitor. You're not here to give him his to-do list. You're not here to tell him how to do things. You're not here to tell him how to govern himself. But you are here to detect a portion, like to say, okay, I sense that my person is off. So let me make them aware that I know they're off, and let me try to be supportive in whatever way supportive looks like for him. Because support for Michael is going to look different than support for Rick, and that's going to look different than support for Christian.
Yeah, that actually goes into a deeper point. I feel like, and someone we were talking about before we started, I feel like too many of the conversations that we have around like what a woman should do and what a man should do, like it's let's just focus on being good human beings
Yes.
and get the rest done later. Because as we've talked about, everybody has all of this trauma, right?
Yes.
And a lot of it is based on either things that people have done to you when you were growing up, ways that you understand the world perceives you growing up. So a lot of people don't even necessarily even get their sense of self outside of the way that they're perceived by the world up until a certain age. And honestly, some people never get it.
Yeah.
So it takes for you to get to that place so you can even start to have those conversations. Or what is not even necessarily what being a man means, what, like, as a man, who am I?
Yeah.
And what role do I choose to take as a man? Because I have the benefit and like the blessings of being like growing up with a number of men who are still now my friends. Like my best friend I've known since I was 3 years old. And we didn't have really deep conversations about life until maybe 3 or 4 years ago, because we were all taught the same thing, that we were all supposed to see the same things the same way. And I found my way, Dale found his way, Terrell found his way. We're men, but we're all men in different ways, and we respect the fact that we're men in different ways.
I think what's also important too is that you have a community that you can come to, whom you all grew up as men in different ways, but you all have an understanding of what it is to be a good human being, you know, and you all bring those understandings together and you enrich each other, as Rick would say. Because like Christian was like, well, how do you know if you're being toxic if you don't recognize it? And the thing is, like Rick said, the people around you should be able to say something. So part of being a good human being is making sure that you are putting yourself around and only allowing people around you whom are going to encourage you and help grow you and want the best for you, and whom are strong enough and outspoken enough to speak up and say, what you're doing is not in alignment with where you say you want to go. So if this is the type of person you say you want to be, then you're going to need to check X, Y, and Z, and X, Y, and Z, and X, Y, and Z. And I think that that is the way that society needs to move towards for this next generation, or how would you say, next century and stuff coming up, because things are changing and people are changing. And we're seeing the many ways that toxic masculinity affects society, right? But we also talked about in this panel this evening how society affects and impacts toxic masculinity, because we've been able to show that it's a revolving door. It's not a one-way door. It's not like guys just walk up in here like, hey, I'm toxic. How the fuck y'all doing? I'm gonna knock this one upside the head. I'm gonna punch this one. You ain't shit, and you ain't shit, and you ain't shit either. That's not how that occurs. You know, society will say, and I'm going to bring this up because it's like furthering the discussion, even though some people will say it's off topic, right? We had the Europeans domesticate the Indians. The Europeans domesticated the slave, who is a stolen person. You took this person from where they were and how they were functioning culturally, and you told them that how they were living was dysfunctional and this was the way of living. And when they sit over here and they look at men of color today and they go, this is dysfunctional and that is dysfunctional, to me, I look at it and I go, well, that is centuries upon centuries of trauma genetically embedded.
I think you want this show to be like 17 weeks long. If we start talking about that, we will be here talking, we'll be dehydrated. Please don't get us started on the historical context of toxicity, because we'll be here all night.
I know.
A whole bag of worms to get to, right, Jenkins?
You know what I'm saying? But the point I'm trying to make in that is this, like, it's a society that use barbarism. They use barbarism to conquer places, to take people's land, to rob, steal, conquer, control under the guise of domestication and rehabilitation. Like, come on now. And you inbred this. And now when people are walking around modeling the very values that were put before them, they're like, oh, it's toxic. But you modeled this shit. This is what the history was built off of.
You build it.
I look at it like, my next question is like, how do we reverse this toxicity? Like, how do we reverse it in such a way where we can prevent toxic masculinity?
You can't reverse.
You talk about deconditioning years and years and years of behavior coupled simultaneously, having people make choices in the present. And that
we can't change that.
I'm like
society, but how can each individual male, like if a man says, you know what, I dig what these young men are saying on this panel, I can identify with all of them. I don't have a supportive network, but I want to be different now.
Self-accountability.
Okay.
Like, I was really fortunate, and it's weird to say that, but I was fortunate in that my grandfather wasn't a toxic man. At least not, he was a raging alcoholic up until the week I was born. But it's all
right. My father stopped drinking when my mom got pregnant with me. She said he was a raging alcoholic, but he found Jesus once he found out he had a daughter on the way. So
yeah, so I had no real strong male relationships up until I was a teenager. And I think I was blessed in that sense just because the absence of the toxicity allowed me to, the absence of pushing of the toxicity, let me not say the absence of it because it was always around, but the fact that I internalized it on my own, solely through my own lens and not through the lens of someone who was accustomed to it, allowed me to recognize that it was wrong and recognize that it was wrong often. And I say that to say, like, there's a sliding scale to this. I was not born and grew up to be this like not toxic male. I'm sure some pretty wrong things. But just that understanding of basic human decency and respect, right? Because no one's gonna get a relationship right. Everyone's gonna do their partner, well, most people are gonna do their partner wrong in some way, shape, or form, right? But it's to that, again, like that basic human tenet of respect and how you treat people that men have historically been allowed to get away with simply because they've been allowed to get away with it. And you see a lot of pushback just because that simple fact is changing. And a lot of that has to do with the advent of the internet and the fact that things are visualized a lot more. The fact that people are allowed to voice their opinions in so much more of a stronger amplitude behind it, I think really it shows that. And that's why I mentioned cancel culture before, because it's not all of it, but a lot of it is just men not being allowed to say and do shit that they've been allowed to say and do for centuries.
Right.
I agree. It's also with cancel culture, what I like to think about it, I like to think of this generation of the Snowflake Generation, where I feel like everyone is easily offended.
Yes.
And everyone is just like, well, I don't like what you said, so let's just cancel you. Let's just ruin your whole career within like a fucking Twitter, you know? Like, I found that so ridiculous. So when it comes to just progression, because I feel like this is a human issue. This is just like how racism it is too. It's just like, we need to start looking at past afflictions and also just like how we're going to better ourselves, how society will keep moving forward, and how pretty much how society will be looking like in the next 50 years. I think there's just now that we just have I think transgender, governor.
Yeah.
I forgot which state it was, but I know they were like the first one. So in small instances, there is progression, not as what we all would want in a much faster rate, but it is also good to just keep the conversation alive, keep that thing alive. We're just like, hey, we need to be better. We need to communicate better with differences between men and women, you know? So I agree with like what Michael was saying.
I agree with all you guys because, and that's one of the reasons why I started the Grown Dating Talk platform, because I just felt like in my walk of life with relationships, I started to see and recognize a lot. And I also did a lot of self-reflection within myself with the choices I was making, the situations that were occurring, because I was like, wait, I'm ending up with these failed relationships. Like, before it was failed relationships because of its physical violence, abuse, treatment and stuff. After that, it became failed relationships and it had nothing to do with violence. It was like, we don't connect. You don't represent what I represent, or you can't communicate, or you have too much going on in the background that you need to address and heal. So cancel culture started to be applied by me as I recognized that this is not working, that's not working, that's toxic, that's toxic, that's toxic. You start to realize what's dysfunctional and what's toxic, and you want to separate yourself from that, you know? But in addition to that, the other point I wanted to make on that is when we deal with cancel culture, I think a lot of cancel culture lately are, and excuse my French, I'm gonna, be very outlandish and stuff. Cancel culture is a lot of these motherfuckers that were in school and it's like, teacher, I want the principal, And now it's adult life and there's nobody to sit there and fix the problems that they started for them. So now it's, I'm gonna cancel you. Motherfucker, you were the kid that was in the dean's office crying and shit. You were the kid that people wanted to stalk the fuck out because you were starting trouble and shit. Like, you were the immature teen who was over there stoking problems. Did you hear what they said about your mama? These are the motherfuckers who are the adults now who can't take it. Or they had the helicopter parent, the parent that solved everything for them and told them how to go about their life and how to do shit. And now they're adults and they don't know how to deal with it. They don't know how to deal with someone not agreeing with them because they grew up in an era where everybody got a fucking trophy. If you a winner, you got a trophy. If you a loser, you got a trophy. Nah, B, you was on the losing team and your ass shouldn't have got a fucking trophy. You should have sat on that bench, got up and shook hands and cried in the bus, because at least then you would have learned how to have some not good emotions, how to feel them shits, how to navigate it. But when you have society over here saying nobody loses, everybody's the winner, well, now we got cancel culture. When you got 12 different fucking deans and only one principal and one AP, and and now everybody, who said what? She talked about you on Twitter last night. That's between your two fucking mamas. That's not for us to talk about in school what happened on Twitter. That's between your mamas. Or the beat them poured into the school. Well, we're going to cancel this shit and we're going to start it back in your house because it don't belong here. I think like that's where cancel culture came from. Go ahead, Michael. Sorry.
It's a weird thing because part of it is, like, I actually wrote something on this recently. But part of it is it's not even this new thing, right? So if you remember, I'm old enough to remember the Dixie Chicks.
Yes.
And I'm old enough to remember the Dixie Chicks getting canceled well before cancel culture was even a term, right?
Yes.
I'm millennial only here trying to ask him what was the Dixie Chicks. I'm sorry for cutting you off.
I got you. The Dixie Chicks were a country rock group, like pop country, the biggest thing in music at the time. They were very against the Iraq invasion. I'm not going to call it a war because that's not what it was. They were very against that, like vocally. And during a concert, abroad, I think they were in Australia or something like that, they very much said, like, we're against this invasion and we're ashamed of the fact that George Bush is from our home state of Texas. Their careers got shot to hell as a result of this. Like, radio stations refused to play their records, and this was what we would now call being canceled. Back then, it was just called backlash.
Right.
If you remember the 1968 Olympics, we had 2 Black Olympians put those black fists up in the air.
Right.
They got canceled. It just wasn't called that. So part of it is, again, because of the internet and the fact that everyone's voices are amplified, you hear the feedback a lot more, and the feedback is a lot louder. A large part of it, though, is, like I said, with the changing social dynamics, There's just shit that is unacceptable now that was acceptable 20 years ago. I love Eddie Murphy. Eddie Murphy's funny as hell. I can't watch Delirious the same way I watched it back then.
Thank you.
And but you know what? It's okay to say that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a lot of it is you have people who, and you heard like people started talking about cancel culture with stupid shit like Pepe Le Pew and the potato head, and a lot of it was my experience as a child. This was tethered to.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a jerk, so I guess it's okay when like facts don't exist in vacuums. And it's,
well, we didn't even understand cancel culture with Pee Wee Herman as kids. Like parents had to be like, he was touching shit in the movie theater. You're like, well, then tell him don't touch, but why he gotta get taken off the TV?
Yeah. So it's a couple of different things. A lot of it, people are just, like you said, a lot of people are just used to their behavior being acceptable all the time, and they don't know how to react to it no longer being deemed acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
Part of it is definitely like social things go in waves. So there's definitely instances of people just outright overreacting to things and not understanding. Like I even think the fact that cancel culture is a mainstream term now, which was taken from Black Twitter. Like that is an overreaction to like the whole socialization of it.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. I definitely agree.
But I feel like the Pepe Le Pew thing is kind of like a little justified. Just
no, it is. No, it definitely. Wait, what part of it? The fact that like people are trying to eliminate him, or the fact that there's an outrage about it?
I feel like it's a double-sided coin because like I feel like the character is kind of like pushing that kind of like rapey vibe, and also I feel like today's standards. I feel like in my generation, kids are just like, well, that's just how we grew up in, but to other much younger, it's just like, nah, that's just like wrong. Why is this skunk trying to like harass this cat, you know?
So the original, and I'm by no means justifying anything, but the original concept of Pepe Le Pew being the way he was, think about it. He's a skunk, and if we're all camping and we see a skunk, are you gonna run up to a skunk and pet it?
Hell no, you want to film that shit
because that skunk is going to turn around and spray you, and you're going to smell really bad for hours. And so the original premise was, here is a skunk who just wants to express love, but he's a skunk. And so before anybody runs away from him, he's going to run to try to find love. We human beings are the ones who associated rapey vibes to what essentially is a pretty innocent cartoon.
Well, we think of it as an innocent cartoon, but a majority of people were just like, well, we don't want to see him. We don't want to see him in a movie where it's just like, it's LeBron, you know, it's Looney Tunes. We don't want to see that. They don't want to represent that, even though I feel like they're trying to poke at it. We're just like, well, here's this character and here's that character that's also there, you know?
But America still voted for a president 4 years ago who admittedly grabbed women by the pussy. Rapey.
Well, that's
more rapey than that.
That's a different can of
pushback from that though, because the part of oh man, that's a whole other set of worms. But part of it is the huge, like you saw all the women's marches that occurred after Trump was elected president, right? So I think part of it is like there's such, and then the Me Too movement happened. So I think part of it is, again, it can go in waves where sometimes it is an overreaction. Mm-hmm. So I think even the fact that someone considered Pepe Le Pew canceled, I think it's important to make a distinction in how things happen. Mm-hmm. Because from my understanding, based on the way it originally happened, if you were in order to be canceled, you had to do something that a lot of people disagreed with. Then they all voiced their disagreement, and that they chose to no longer support you because they disagreed with whatever you did. In the instance of Pepe Le Pew, it wasn't even like they didn't even put the movie out. Like the creators themselves made an artistic decision to not include this scene in a film. They made an editorial choice. Like no one pressured them into doing that.
Right.
And then there was the backlash against it, which I thought was interesting. But Rick, like you said, it for someone who didn't view it that way, who doesn't view it that way, let me say didn't, there can definitely be that push and pull. But like I said before, facts don't exist in vacuums. And I think it's at least a good discussion to have, like whether it's okay for a cartoon man to be chasing around a cartoon female, considering the fact that, like, as a middle school teacher, I've seen young boys harass young women. It's definitely a discussion to have. I don't feel like there needs to be like a determination either way without actual research behind it. So I do think sometimes a lot of people jump the gun in that regard.
I do. I like that. I like that.
I just feel like things are gonna get a little more worse. But what I mean by worse is just like people are gonna get more offended easily. I feel
They
like
are. They
no, I feel like
are.
they
You're
are, but it's
absolutely
just,
right. It's not gonna get a little worse. It's gonna get really, really bad.
it's
And
gonna
then
get
gonna
more
start
worse.
Station, and
Yeah.
then it's get better little by little.
I'm
I
gonna
feel
say that it is gonna get worse, and we can see that because I know that Rick has to leave in a minute. So if he has to jump out, we understand this. But what I want to do is take a moment right now to throw in and say that I know that it's getting worse because when we have gurus out here, relationship gurus, and again, I'm not trashing Kevin Samuels, the man, but we are going to talk about these theories and stuff that he pushes because what I want to say is this. I don't consider Kevin Samuels himself a bad person. I think he's probably a very wonderful man as an individual himself. And I do happen to agree with a lot of the things that he has to say. However, there is a portion, there is a percentage of the pie when it comes to him. And I feel like he represents that man from 1920. That Papa was a Rolling Stone, wherever he lays his hat is his home. And I feel like some of the advice that he gives is kind of toxic and it's going to help not just him in general because this problem has existed way before Kevin Samuels got up on a platform, but just the amount of people who tune in on that and this war on the modern woman and war on the high value man and stuff like that, I feel like it's kind of poisoning this idea of gender roles, how the genders view each other and what their expectations are. And I feel like it's kind of making things worse or pushing things in a worse direction, so to say.
The only issue I have, and I haven't watched a ton of his stuff, but the only issue that I do have is I've seen him generalize, or actually, yeah, I've seen him specify, like attribute certain personality traits to gender when like they apply to everybody. So like when I said before about being a good human being versus being a good man or a good woman, I've seen him discuss, and not just him, people in general, anyone who talks about relationships oftentimes make this mistake where all women do this or all men do this when we're all like snowflakes and no two of us are alike. And it doesn't necessarily apply to everybody. So I think the danger is just an overgeneralizing.
Yes, I do. I agree. Have you seen his show, Christian? Have you ever viewed any of Kevin Samuel's stuff?
I'll be honest, I don't even know what you're talking about.
Oh, okay. No, there's nothing wrong with that at all. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Definitely.
I'm hearing everything. I'm relating it. I understand. I don't know who.
Christian's like, I'm gonna Google this shit later because I'll see what the hell they was
yeah, because I'm like, I'm taking like a lot of mental notes right now.
Yeah, like there was one theory that he kicked, and I know if he sees this show, he gonna be like, damn it, if you don't get your ass off that down, you fucking stuck there, woman. But there's one theory he kicked where he made this, he tried to compare, and I get him and his metaphors and his similes and shit, and how he's comparing two things, but he was basically likening when women having issues with men cheating on them, women having issues with men who make six figures, and not six figures like 1 year, but he's been making six figures consecutively for 5 years plus. Women who want high value men, but don't want to accept that high value men are entitled to cheat. He's saying that they have the option to, whether they choose to take the option or not is up to them. But if this high value man decides to cheat, that this woman needs to mind her business and not give him stress and not say anything to him. And in fact, look the other way because she doesn't have to work. He may be taking care of kids. It's not his, like he's doing all of these things. So if he has options, there's nothing you can say about that because he's a high value man. If you don't like it, you could leave, but then you're going to leave this high value man to go be with some other man who's going to treat you bad and you don't even know what comes with that other man. So he said to this woman when she said, well, then if a high value man can cheat, then I can cheat too. And Kevin Samuel said to her, oh, well, if you want to cheat, then that means that he should have the freedom to just haul off and knock the furniture out your mouth if he wants to, because, you know, you guys are allowed to hit women. He was saying women are allowed to hit men and men can't retaliate. So if men don't have the point where they can cheat, and I guess cheat in peace, so to say, then, and you don't want these men to cheat in peace, then you have to be willing to give up the right to claim that, you know, men can't hit you back if you hit them. And for me, it triggered me personally, because being a woman who's been in a relationship not treated right by men, seeing, you know, having children who have not been treated right in the past by people I dated, like, that was a triggering statement for me. Like, what do you mean if men are allowed to cheat, he should be able to haul off? And I was like, all women don't walk around hitting men.
That is,
I'm a pick up and hit this.
I don't think you get more toxic than that.
Like these
That's
unhealed, broken women saying, but I have this man, and what do you think I should do? I was sitting over there like, what the fuck is Kevin doing? What the hell?
I'm gonna hope that you misquoted that, because if
I did not misquote that
like
shit.
the most ignorant shit I've ever heard in my life.
You can ask Rick, because I played it so he can hear it, because he didn't know who Kevin
Yeah,
was at that point.
me either. And when she played, I was like, what?
That is a statement made solely from the perspective of imbalanced power dynamics.
Yes.
That's the only way that makes sense, because to say that is to assume that there is no such thing as a high quality woman who's on the same footing as you.
Thank you.
So yeah, that comes from an extremely outdated and archaic idea of what power dynamics should be and what they should look like.
Yes,
and
because this man
ignorant.
is thinking that if you make X amount of money, the world of options are open to you. But the idea that you don't think some of these world of options are high value women, like, women are very educated. There are a lot of more mothers are breeding their daughters to be men. And I know you're gonna be like, what the fuck does that mean? Because she don't have a penis. I know, but I mean,
that sounds like a confusing statement.
Yeah, I know, it sounds like a toxic statement. And the thing is, it is a toxic statement, but it's a true toxic statement. There are too many women out here raising their daughters to be men, and then they go and get in relationships with men, right? And they're sitting over here. Now there's a competition, because I don't know how to be a feminine if I was raised to be in my masculine. That doesn't make me a man. It doesn't make a man less than a man. But if I was raised to do all of this, and now I'm like up here, and I meet a man who's up here, and he thinks he could do these things, brother, what makes you think I'm gonna deal with that? I'm on the same level as you are.
It's not about a man, though. It's about being a high functioning adult.
Thank you.
And again, the expectation before was women were not expected to be high functioning adults.
That's right.
Be dependent on whatever man that they live with, whether it was their brother, their husband, whoever.
Yeah.
I always think about this often, that there was a time in this country, well, a lot of times in this country, but specifically there was a time in this country where women needed their husband's written permission to get a bank account.
Yes.
So like 1953 type thing.
Yeah.
I want to say, I think 67.
Yeah.
I want to say it's definitely the 60s. Like, so when you have someone, so the same way that I tell people all the time when we talk about race, that interracial marriage was illegal until I think 1959 in at least one country. You have people alive now who were born in that time frame. They are raising children with their mindset from that time frame. You have men who were born in that time frame who are raising men with that perspective still. That's why I say, like I said, I was blessed, I think, in a lot of ways, to not have any dominant male role model at all until I was a teenager and was able to think for myself.
I think that is really important. And now the final question I want to ask, and then we're going to wind this episode down for the evening, is
I unfortunately have to step out. I enjoyed tonight, and I'm going to tune in so I can hear the final question. I'm going to leave my comments.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for joining us.
Mike, great talking to you. Christian, great to see you. You look fantastic. Lana, I'll talk to you soon.
Yes, I will talk to you later.
Good luck.
So, Christian and Michael, the one question that I want to ask before we end our episode this evening is, are gender roles important any longer? Because before, gender roles were really important. The idea was that the man does this and this is what the woman does. But nowadays, should that even be looked at any longer? I think
I'm
personally no, but I want to know from a man's perspective what you guys think and how you feel about that.
um hmm I can probably answer half of that question.
Okay.
um as to what is it, like the role of a woman. I'm sorry, I'm trying to understand the
Like, are
question.
gender roles important any longer in relationships? Does it matter who plays what role?
I would say there are nowadays,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like in relationships people have, it's a 50-50 kind of thing where I pay the bills, you pay this bill, you know.
Yes.
On some day I feel like it's just like a little bit like the gender roles are just like just a little bit mismatched.
No, but I like what you're saying. You're saying that you feel like you should be equal partners within the relationship, and each person should take turns in whatever role is necessary to keep the relationship functioning.
Yeah, it's just like, it's just because like me just growing up now, I'm just seeing this just like now almost. I don't have, I would say I don't have a marriage to look back on and say, well, I have fact checking in this part. I don't have any of that. I'm you know, I'm still young. I'm still learning how people, how women are, especially, and I'm going off the best I can think of, honestly.
Mhm.
But I would say in a relationship and gender roles is just played 50-50.
I
You
like.
know, if you show me respect of just like not being so toxic, or they give me the wild bitch smack when I tell you no, like nah. Yeah. So I would say, yeah, I think my answer would be like a bit of 50-50.
Okay, I like that. What about you, Michael?
I'd like to say that we're evolving past that. Just because, like I said, the 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 equality of opportunity, and even Chris, when the first thing you said when you talked about should the role stay the same, the first thing you said was money. That was the first thing you went talking about, bills, right?
Mhm.
And again, the reason for that is because women had and still have like ridiculously less earning potential than men do, or rather, not earning potential, earning realities
Yeah.
than men do. Because it's not that they should not be paid less; they simply are because, again, social inertia, right? So, in thinking as that becomes equalized, and as we have all of these people who have non-gender conforming identities become more prominent, you're going to really see like the opposite of that, because it's, what is it going to be? What is a, because you do even now have the different expectations, which are really ignorant of what a cisgender man is versus what a transgender man is, right?
Right.
Things eventually, all of these expectations, again, I hope we will get to a point where we just evolve to perception of just like, what is a good human being? And do I want to date this human being? And outside of that, everyone's going to have their individual wants. So there are still going to be women who ascribe to, I want a man to be X, Y, and Z, or men who say, I want a woman to be X, Y, and Z. And that's fine because everyone has their own personal choices and their own personal preferences. But the idea that the expectation should be a blanket one across the board for everybody, I think we're past that at this point.
Yeah.
Also, I feel like it involves the individual as well. If you're the type of man that's just like, hey, I'm not really a type of person that you don't have to fill these quotas or anything like that, or can meet a girl that's just like, I'm not really big into going out, let's just go and just watch TV, you know, type of thing. I feel like as society gets older, things will tend to change, and things will just overall we'll look in the past and just be like, well, we're not like that. I know, for example, I know I was watching this old movie. I forgot it was from like the 1950s, on how life was like on a day-to-day basis. Just like, we didn't have, obviously at that time they didn't have any phones, different ways of communication. So the ways that they would just communicate is just like how would they talk throughout the days. And I feel like now we can just look back on it as just like, well, we don't have to be like that no more. We can obviously change. And there's also, it's just like, and I know this is personal experiences, it's just like, it's 50-50. I'm helping you, you can help me. And if she's not about it, if I'm not about it, it's just not going to work. Plain and simple, you know?
So I agree with you. And one of the things I want to say in bringing this episode to a close is Christian said it best. You know, it's about working in together. It's about what's beneficial for each other. And at the end of the day, toxic masculinity is something that can be resolved within the individual. You can look in within yourself and say, hey, I notice I'm functioning these ways and I don't like this. If you look at others around you and you don't like the way they're functioning, understand that they are a mirror image. They may be portraying some of the things that you see within yourself that you decide you want to change, and you recognize that you can't change it in that circle. It's okay to go and get a different circle. It is okay to do the opposite of what you've been shown to do that you know doesn't work. And what I want to say is, for women, learn to sit back and say less and listen a little more. Because I think that as women, we've said so much for so long that now we do need to learn to take a step back and say a little less and learn to listen a little more. Because one of the things that I heard this evening on this panel was 3 grown-ass men from 3 different age areas really sit there and give you guys the Bible. Like 48 Laws of Power, these motherfuckers gave you 78 cards of life, okay? For men out there who go, well, I don't agree with that. Well, motherfucker, look at what's going on in your life. Because if your relationship stays straight and shit, you don't have a marriage, or your marriage is fucked up, you might want to go revisit the 78 laws of life over here. You might want to replay this episode a few times.
Go revisit the all the commandments we just stated.
Exactly. Shit, even Moses broke it and had to go back up and get another set. It's understandable. Like, ain't nothing wrong with being like, hey, I need another round, one more game. Nothing wrong with it. And ladies, do not sit there and go, I'm going to tell a man how to be a man. You ain't a fucking man. And since you're not a man, you can't tell him how to be him. Okay? And there's no one definition on how to be a man. So when you're raising your sons, take those things into consideration. Take into consideration the fact that he needs positive role models around him. Take into consideration who the hell you're bringing around him. Take into consideration the family members that you're having around your male children, because you can love uncle, brother, granddad to death, but if they're not conducting themselves in the ways that you would want your sons conducting yourselves, then you need to be real careful with the exposure and stuff in there, okay? Be careful when you sit over here and say men ain't shit, because if you have sons, your sons are hearing what you're thinking about men, and then you're teaching your son that he's going to grow up to be ain't shit. Be careful how you talk about their fathers when you and the fathers are not together, because you might think that he's an ain't shit boyfriend and an ain't shit husband, and maybe you're right, but that doesn't make him an ain't shit father. He could still be a damn good father to his child. And if you talking trash about him, imagine how your son is feeling, because your son is part of that man that you're talking trash about. And again, you can't tell a gender how to act a ways when you're not that gender. Men, if your life is fucked up, don't sit your ass there and give people relationship advice. Don't give people relationship advice or life advice until you go get your shit straight. Because if you ain't sit down with a therapist and check your demons, then it's highly likely that you are not in a position to help somebody else check theirs. You might be able to identify it for them and go, oh, you got that monster, but you can't help them fix that monster because that monster's still raging in you too. And I'm going to coin that age-old phrase. If you don't have nothing nice to say, then don't say nothing at all. That is one of the root causes when it comes to checking toxic masculinity within the community. If you as a man don't have anything positive to bring to the table to get this brother on the road he needs to be on, as opposed to the road that you see him on, then shut the hell up. Go find a man that can voice it in a better way and bring that young brother around it. Black men, please continue to hug and embrace and hold close and nurture your sons. Please continue to stand up and voice for the fact that you have feelings, you have emotions, you have a right to be heard in a relationship. Do not feel crushed and pressured by women, because my gender alone, we have our own things that we got to be working on and stuff to take care of. And in order for dating and relationships and these toxicities to stop, we as individuals have to start taking ownership of ourselves and then surrounding ourselves with individuals whom are better than us so we can grow to be better than how we were. Do you guys want to add anything or any advice before we head on out?
I have one.
Go ahead.
Growing up, I've always like observed a lot of people.
Mhm.
So when I know you being a mom, you can relate to this very well. It's just that kids analyze things. If they don't know something, they're gonna question it and they'll eventually find the answer.
Mhm.
But it's just like if your household is like that, if your mom or anyone else has a revolving relationship door, that can also be taxing in a way, I understand. But as me growing up, I was always just seeing, women being hurt by, their male counterparts and everything like that. And I've always wondered why, until actually I got older and it's just like, okay, now I get it why. It's almost, I like to think of it as like, I was like, oh, I kind of just fell down the stairs, but like, I know why type thing.
Yes.
So yeah, that's what I wanted to leave my last note on.
I like that. Thank you. What about you, Michael?
Well, two things. One, you had mentioned, to Black men, hold your sons, continue to nurture them, continue to nurture your friendships too. Your grown male friendships, because that's something again that a lot of us don't do. Black men don't tell each other that we love one another enough. So make sure you do that. And forgot what the last one was. So I think that's a good one to leave it on. Oh, wait, no, on the mom part. The relationships. And again, this isn't the thing and the message to women, it's a message to people.
Mm-hmm.
Check the negative traits that you see in the people that you date and see how connected they might be to the positive ones that you look for. Because a lot of times, both men and women, they end up in this revolving thing where they keep asking themselves why they're keep ending up with the wrong person, but those wrong traits that you end up finding might be connected to some things that you're actually looking for. So
exactly. So with that said, please be sure to tune in next week. Join us here on Grown Dating Talk for all things grown and mature.
For the record, yeah. For the record, for the record, yeah. For the record. Been a little too nice to y'all. Now I gotta up price for y'all. Snake eyes on dice for y'all. Shoulders on ice for y'all. Frozen. 8-6 all the hate. I won't get involved today. Got lost in the ball and age. I'm flipping the bars. I'm flipping the. On record, off record. I still count wins when they doubt it. On record, off record. I let them take advantage. I was wildin'. On record, off record deals. Tell them talk to Colin for the quote. On record, off record. I still want the act, not the ghost. Running through it with the young influence. Adolescent presence. I'm succumbing to it. I've been giving yeses when I shouldn't do it. I complete ejected with them elusive. And I'm barely moving, but I'm still gon' boost them. I can't work on winners when I know you're losing. So I work the winners and they play the deuces. Guess I have to pivot, shooting the bazookas for the facts. I need racks, paper cash, buck a tax. That's a joke, tell them laugh. Uncle Sam, buck out the bag. Brody plot, but get a whack. Contract, give me the max. I got lab on my back. You ain't that, then it's raps. Whoa, 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 whoa. For the record, I'm done trying to make y'all comfortable. For the record, you ain't trying to grow, then it's done for you.